Okay, between these videos, I've just made a couple of things different. So one is, if you go up to where it says user boxes, I've added a margin around both. You've got to add both, otherwise it won't add it to the ones that are made read only. So you add the margin around, which is the gap between the boxes. And what else did I do? I did that. So I set the minimum width and height this time to 100, and it just put them a little bit closer together and a little bit bigger. I thought it looked slightly nicer. So you know, fiddle with it as you want, but if you notice any differences on mine, it's just those couple of lines of code. I just forgot to press record. So I've done that. So I'm going to move on now to making the button work. So if we go down here, so let's start with the main button, which is when you make a guess. Now you're going to see me make lots of other methods in this because there's things that we're going to want to use more than once. So there's things that the reset might want to use. And when that's the case, I'm going to separate out into a different method and call it from this method instead. So let's start. So we're going to start by, actually, before we do this, I made one that checked if the win was valid. So check that the input's valid, sorry. So we'll start by making that. So let's make def check inputs valid, or input is valid, or whatever. So I'm going to start by saying the valid is true, and what this is going to do is this is going to check that they've entered letters in every box, and it also checks there's no spaces. So if I say for I, so I'm basically checking it's true. I'm going to try and prove it wrong. So for I in self.user textboxes self.current row. So we're going to use the current row variable, which is 0 at the moment, to get just those objects from that row, so those text boxes, and then loop through. That's what this is doing. So we're looping through the active row effectively, and then we can say if I, because that's the text box, dot text. So that's how you access the text from a text box. You just write whatever it's called, dot text afterwards. So if the text from that text box dot is alpha, which checks for alphabetical characters, if that's false, then valid equals false. So it's a quick validation check. I could add more validation to this if I want, but I could do it all in a sort of check valid method. Might be a nice way of doing it. So now this, whenever I call this, it's going to return either true or false, depending on if my top line is valid in terms of its inputs or not. So then in this button guess clicked, I can reference that right at the start. So I wrote if self.check inputs valid is equal to false, then I need to change the user message. So you remember we've got that text above the button. So I'm going to do self.userMessage.setText. I'm going to set it to something new. So I'm going to say, please enter letters only. And then I need to repaint this. So you do self.userMessage.repaint, which means basically redraw it on the screen. So now, if I run it, if I press guess, look, it says please enter letters only. If I enter numbers, it's still saying it. Well, nothing's going to happen, is it? Because I've not even told it to get rid of anything else yet, because there's nothing else in my button guess click thing, but there will be. So if that's true, we then want to first probably check if they've guessed the correct word. So again, check win might be another thing we want to make. So if I do def check win like that, Now this could be a simple sort of just a return true or false, but we might want to do more to it than this, like setting the text of the message above, maybe even swapping the buttons over. Because if they win, we might want to set things to green, we might want to make things disappear. So I'm going to start by saying again, win equals false. Current word or current row word equals blank. So this is just a variable I'm going to use in this method. So I'm going to use this to amalgamate the text boxes entries. So sort of join those letters together, and then I can compare it to the chosen word. So I'm going to say for I in self dot, it's the same loop as before, user text boxes self dot current row. So loop through self dot current row, loop through the text boxes on the current active row, and then do the current row word plus equals I dot text. So it's going to loop through the current active row, get each letter from each cell because they've got we set the maximum to be 1, and then it's going to add it to that word. So we're going to end up with a 5-letter word there. So once it's done that, we can then ask the question, if current row word is equal to self.comp word, what do we call it? Yeah, comp word, self.comp word. Then we need to set win to true because you've guessed the correct word. We then need to choose what we want to do. So what I did here is I looped through these objects again, so the active row basically. So I loop through it again, but this time I'm doing a couple of things to how they look. So I'm going to do I dot set style sheet, and I'm going to do, I'll always do it like this now, border 2 pixels solid, and we'll do black again, reminding you that you can do hex. We're going to do, what else did I do? I set it to green, so I did font size 30, and I did background green. Okay, so I've just basically made it so I'm keeping the font size and everything, but I'm making the background green on those boxes. So it sort of highlights you've won is the idea. And I'm going to do I dot set read only to true, so they can't edit those boxes anymore. And then I'm going to change the user message. So I'm going to change the user message dot set text to winner, repaint it, and finally, now again, this is probably something I need to put in a different function, but I'm going to call a thing that swaps the buttons. So we'll call it, because we're going to potentially have to swap back, so there's no point doing it here. Ideally this would be a function. Okay, and then we'll return win from the start. So win is either going to be true or false. So I need to make this button swap. There's a lot of, I'm going to do this a lot. Sometimes people find it's easier, or sorry, sometimes people prefer, I do it like this, but sometimes prefer to code it all together and then demodularize it. I find a lot of students like doing that. I prefer to sort of, as I'm coming across things I want to do, I try to think, is that something I'm going to reuse? Is that better in its own method? And I do it like this. So it feels a little bit hodgepodge, but we can put it all together. Because what effectively we want to happen is our because it's event driven, our buttons become like an orchestra. So when the button's clicked, I'll say, right, do this method and this method and this method, not here's a big block of code. So this is like the orchestra pulling on the strings of different sections, is how I like to think about it. So we'll make a button swap thing. Now, if we imagine we're going to call this more than once, we don't know which button's active at the minute. So what we want to do is sort of check the visibility of one button and then either hide it or show it, depending on that. So if we say if self dot, because this will then work for changing back as well. So what do we call our buttons? Button guess dot is visible. If we check if it's visible, so that's going to be either true or false. So if it's true, then we want to hide it. So we want to do self dot button guess dot hide and self dot button reset dot show. So it's that simple. Obviously, it could also be the other way around. So in the else, we will do self dot button reset dot hide self dot button reset guess dot show. So this will look at the visibility of guess and either show or hide it and reset regardless. So we can just call this button swap now whenever we want to swap buttons, and that will obviously hide one, show the other. So that's button swap. Where were we? So we've now got a check win, and we're checking if we've got some validation in there as well. So let's go back to our button clicked. So what I've got here is elif. So if it's valid, basically, then do that. That's if valid's false though. Otherwise, let's check the win. So do self dot check win. See if that equals false. And if it does equal false, we need to decide what we're going to do. So there's a couple of things here. So what will we do here? We'll repaint. Do we reset user message at this point? Do we set it back to blank? Because it might have carried over from the old one. So so I did some of this last night, but I never finished it because I did it in the evening. So self.userMessage.setText. We might delete this if it's not right. And let's set it to blank, and then let's repaint it. Because like obviously different things in our code are going to change it, so we want to reset it almost at the start. And then if it gets set to something else, then that's fine. So let's repaint that. And then we'll do a check. So if self.current row is less than 4, so if we're not on our last row, because obviously if we're on our last row, we don't want to do the same process because it's effectively game over. So if it's not game over yet, because we've got more guesses to come, we then want to activate rows and probably we need to change the color of the active row and change the color of the next ones. We also need to make some of them read only. So at the minute, all the next ones are read only. So imagine I've just filled in line number 1. I want line number 1 to become read only, but we want to color it, don't we? Because Wordle colors different colors depending on if they're in the word. And then we want to activate the next row. So we want to make the next row not read only. So let's start with the coloring. So let's say self.color active row, which you can probably guess is another function we're going to make. And then we'll do self.activate next row, which is another function we're going to make. So let's make these functions. So I'll make it under here. So def color active row. Let's do that one first. So we've got active row. So we need to loop through each item in the row and compare it to the computer word. So let's start with a loop. So let's start for I in range 5. And we need to do that, access the first text box basically at that position. So we can do that because we've got the current row being 0 at the start. So we've got our 0. We can get our 0 from this loop as well. So we can access the first 0, 0. We can access the top left box. So self.user text boxes. Self.current row at position I dot, and we'll set that as read only to true. So set read only to true. So that's going to loop through. Well, it's going to do it one at a time. But as it comes across the boxes, we're going to set read only to true. So then what we want to do is we want to find the value of that box. So we'll just call it box val. So that equals self.user text boxes, and then again self.current row, and then in the next set of square brackets I. But this time we want to do text. So we want it, whatever the text is from that, we want that to equal box val. So then we can use that text like this, look. So we can use that text in comparisons that we're going to do. So we've now got, if you imagine, entered F. So F is stored in box val. We effectively want to compare that F with the same position from the computer word and then color dependently. So we could say something like if box val is equal to self.comp word at position I. Because remember, like when I is 0, we want to use that throughout. So if it's the same, we need to color it green, I think. So self.user text boxes, it's the same long-winded way of referencing. So it's this here, look. So the user text box you're looking at, we want to do set style sheet. And I'll show you what I did last night, because we can copy and paste it. So I did go for green. So I'll just press enter on some of these. So I just did border. Don't want that there. I did, and we don't want that there. So I did the border, the font size keeping the same, and I changed the background to green. So that's dead simple. But then we effectively want to ask the same question, but to see, not the same question. We're not saying is the box val exactly the same. We're then going to say, is it in the computer word? So is the value you've put in the box in self.comp word somewhere? If it is in the comp word, then we again need to reference it and set the style sheet, but only this time we're setting it to yellow. And if it's not, so that's if it's in the right position, that's if it's in the word somewhere, and then the else would become the same thing effectively, but we don't want yellow, we want what did I put? I think I put grey, dark grey, like that. So that's going to colour our rows. So we can check this by, where's the button click? Let's change this active row thing. Let's get rid of that. let's see if this works. So if my word was hello, so let's have an H and an L in the correct position, an R and an E there, and an N. So we've obviously got an issue with the size, which we can fix. That's not a problem. But you can see the colours seem to be working because H and L are in the correct position for the word hello. E is, it should be there, so it's going yellow. So that's working fine. And that's after I press guess. So we're getting somewhere. Need to change why these boxes are changing size, but I can find that out. I found that some of these, where you've got things like margin here on, that's on the guess, buttons. So in these user boxes, I've also got these margins here, look. So it might be that we need to add those in here for when they change color, so it's not changing too much. Because I shouldn't have changed the minimum. There you go, that's better. So you put the margins back in and keep it consistent and it'll work. So obviously some of those letters were wrong. So that's working. So we then need to do the activate next row section, which is a lot shorter, and then we're nearly done. Okay, so let's make it here. So def activate next row. So here we want to loop through again for I in range 5, so it's similar to the last one. So we're going to loop through based on comp number. So we're going to say self.user text boxes at position self.current row, but we'll do +1 because we're looking at the next row, and we'll say obviously at position I, and we'll do dot set font size, set style sheet, because we want to change things. Because if you remember there, when they're not active, we've made them like dark grey and stuff. So again, I'm going to copy this from what I did yesterday because I am getting bored of writing all the style sheet stuff, as I'm sure you are. Okay, so I did border 2 pixels solid, black, font size 30, background white. So again, I think for sanity, where did I put it? Margin, because I've added that, I need to add that back in because it seems to be resetting some of these styles. So I'll add the margin back in. It's for I in range 5. So I'll add that back in. So that's working. And then we need to do the reference again underneath, but we're going to set read only to false. Okay, so and the other thing we probably want to do at the bottom outside of the loop, so if we break out of this loop, once it's looped through and done that, we want to do self.current row to +=1. So the next time it runs, it's knowing that the active row is 1, not 0. So when we run it, I'll type something in that's close. Press guess. It's coloured that in. I can't interact with them anymore, but these ones have now become active and the colour's changing. So that's working. So we are closer than you think. So we've got a lot of the game logic done now, especially the bigger things. We've got button swaps, whatever. So we need to just finish. I can't find where my methods are here. So we need to finish this. So if their current row is not less than 4, so basically if they're on the last row, what do we want to do? So we want to do, and this is why breaking this up into different methods and stuff is better, because this becomes really easy. So I'd put an else, and then I think about, what do I still want to do? Well, I still want to color the rows, so I can do color active row, and that's still going to color in their final guess. But then I probably want to run some kind of game over function. So I want to do game over, and this will be quite small, so I need to make a game over function. So this will be really small because it's just changing a message and swapping the buttons. So self def game over. So then I would do self dot user message dot set text, and then here we probably want to say you lost, but also tell them what the word is that they should have got. So we'll put you lost, put the word was, and then in the squiggly brackets do self.comp word. So that's going to say what the word is they were trying to guess, because obviously that's probably been infuriating them, especially with my word list. And then we do self.userMessage.repaint, and then we swap the buttons, which we've now got a method for. So button swap. That's it. So game over is working. I think we've done the game logic for how it will work. So it's now a case of just checking reset. So with reset, what did I do in here? So I'm just trying to find my code from yesterday. I can't find it. I must have done a reset. Doesn't look like I did. I must have done. Okay, let's find out what I did do then. So on my reset, oh no, I have done it. I was going to say, surely it's not that simple. So it's just high up. So if it resets, we're starting the game again. Oh yeah, because we've got to get a new random word and things. So I'll do self.get random word. So to generate a new random word, self.current row sets back to 0. Self.reset. Now I don't need to do that. I can just reset it. So self.user message equals blank, which is what, or space, which is what it was at the start of the game, if you remember. And then for I row in enumerate self.user text boxes, because if you remember, we need to effectively do the same thing again we did at the start, where we aren't creating the rows, but we are generating the style, and we also need to set the text. So we loop through the whole thing by row, but also we can reference it by I. So we'll say for user box in row, it's slightly different to what we did before. User box dot set style sheet. And we'll have border 2 pix solid 1 2 3 4 5 6. We'll have font size. So I'm just checking what I did. Font size is 30 pixels. Background is white. And we'll have a margin is 10 pixels each way. think that's everything that's gonna for that bit. Then we want to set them as read only. So user box dot set read only to false. And we also need to set the text. So we didn't do this before, but you can set text like that. And we need to set it to blank because they've all got letters in at the moment. So then what we then want to do is in here, say if I is not equal to self.current row, we need to set them as read only. So user box dot set read only to true. So they go great. And we need to set the style sheet again. So here, if I copy that, it's the same. The only difference is the color. We went for like a light grey. I'll find out. Just to keep it consistent with what we started with. On here, I've got it to say light grey. Light grey. And then I run after the loop is executed. So it'll be in line with the whole thing. So there, self.button swap. I think we are done. I think that's Wordle. So let's play. Oh no, what have we got here? Oh, I've missed a colon there. So, right. So we've got Wordle. So at the minute, actually, I'm going to be so bad at this, but we'll check it works and play properly. At the minute, I had this get random word turned off. So let's turn that back on. Set hello to blank. Let's check. Right. So let's I don't know. Right. A-E-I-O-U. Now I'm pretty sure that's cheating. It's worked for me, but I'm pretty sure in the proper Wordle you can only enter your words have got to be a word. So because we've got our file, we could take the input as part of our validation, take the input and check it exists in our words list. So you could do that. We've got that little validation block where we're checking the letters. We just add something else to that to clarify it, maybe change the message if it's not a word. But I'll let you do that. So AE exists but not in this. So let's say I'm going to cheat. Let's say an E could be there, an A could be there. And let's try some other letters that might appear that I haven't tried. Right, it's got an R as well. So but we're not finding any of the right positions yet. So let's try an E there, an A there. See, we're getting somewhere with my cheating. So it's definitely an NA and an R there. So there's no point guessing those. It's going to be one of these words I've hardly ever heard of. E. It can't be there. That was a silly guess. It's got to either be one of these last two. So we'll put that there. There's no point guessing A and R there. I might as well use these to guess other letters. So let's say C, K, H. No. That was a waste of time. Right, so it's last guess. So an E and an R is there, an A is there. I'm sure some of you are shouting out words this could be, but I am struggling. Waiver, that's a word that includes letters we've not checked yet. Waxer. I was close, but like I say, I think I've cheated anyway because I'm pretty sure every guess has to be a word, but I'll let you do that because the main thing is you've got the basics of user interfaces down. We've got buttons. The next thing I'm probably going to move on to in these videos is showing you PyQt Designer, which is how you can use the designer to make your user interface, and then you can either interact with it like we are or just import it. So I'll do that as a set of videos next, and then we'll go into a harder project when I've next got a block of time. I've got a few good ideas on what that might be.